EMS as a whole, we really have to evaluate how we do everything we do. And we got to redefine what an emergency is, right? Because the model has always been, we have all this call volume, put more units on the road to cover the
Right.
call volume. And I think, people are starting to realize that not all of these calls necessarily need to exist.
Welcome to In Service, the EMS Podcast, where frontline experience meets leadership insight. Hosted by Jason Falvey, a seasoned paramedic and EMS leader with over 30 years in the field. This show brings you conversations with people shaping emergency medical services today. From street-level medics to innovators on the bleeding edge of EMS, we dive into real stories, leadership strategies, and what it takes to build high-performing teams in high-stakes environments. Let's get in service.
We copy you down, Eagle. Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
Today we're joined by a respected EMS leader from Cheyenne, Wyoming. Since 2011, he has worked on the front lines of emergency medical services. He's known for setting high clinical standards, developing strong teams, and mentoring the next generation of EMS professionals. He was the tactical EMS coordinator for the Cheyenne TEMS unit. He worked closely with SWAT teams to deliver life-saving care in high-risk scenarios. He leads with a steady hand, sharp clinical instincts, and a deep respect for the crews he serves alongside. Welcome, Derek Hendren.
Thank you.
So tell us where you're from. You grew up in Wyoming?
I actually grew up in a small town in northwestern Nebraska in the Panhandle, not far from Wyoming. I was born in Wyoming. The hospital was right across the state line. But yeah, I grew up in a town of about 600 people in small town Nebraska. Went through school there, graduated high school there. Shortly after high school, wasn't quite sure where I wanted to land in life, what I wanted my career to look like. Was doing a lot of farming jobs, ranching jobs, things of that nature. My parents moved to Cheyenne. My dad took a job at the VA medical center there. So I followed and was working a few jobs in Cheyenne when somebody mentioned having a EMT program that was, a fairly short commitment of, 12 weeks or whatever. It wasn't a very long time. And, didn't cost a lot of money. So I decided to give that a shot and see how that went, and kind of immediately enjoyed it. Then completed that program, got hired on. That's kind of where my career began.
And you're married, right? You have a family. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I'm married. I've been married for next year will be 10 years. I have 2 children, a 7-year-old and a 2-year-old.
That's fantastic. So anything in particular inspire you to get into EMS in the first place?
I've always liked, the math and science world throughout school. I enjoyed that. My dad's worked in the hospital settings, most if not all of my life. So I've always been interested in it, drawn to it. I was hurt a lot as a kid, so I was exposed to the hospitals and stuff more than I probably should have been.
What'd your dad do with?
He runs the laboratory for the VA in Cheyenne.
In EMS, when you were on the road as a medic, any particular calls stand out?
Yeah, I mean, I think, we impact people's lives and they impact ours, usually when you're expecting it the least. I think when people talk about hard calls or things that, that you'll carry for the rest of your life, oftentimes aren't the ones that you would think, the high profile deaths. And I think of, the situations of, elderly people that are living all alone and, their world they've known forever is now gone and you're kind of the last human there with them. Then my first cardiac arrest ever was a clinical save where, we had great bystander CPR. Everything just kind of went the way it should. And the patient had an amazing outcome. So there I was, a brand new EMT thinking, that's how things go.
This is how it works.
Yep.
Nope.
Yeah. The next quite a few of them proved to me that, that was the anomaly and that's what you strive for. That's not what you get on every call. But yeah, in Wyoming, it's kind of a mix. We Cheyenne is about 65,000 people, somewhere in that neighborhood. So a lot of people live in the city. But you have, your short transport times and your more city type calls. But we also had far reaching areas of the county that very rural people that, don't really visit hospitals, and you're with them for a long period of time, up to an hour at times.
Wow.
So you you kind of had to learn to balance that with your different patient populations. You had to be comfortable doing stuff in a hurry in a short amount of time and getting them to the hospital, or, planning for, your initial intervention. And then how do you maintain that for an hour?
A lot of helicopter usage with those kind of transport times or not?
Yeah, by design, yes. In reality, not so much because the weather was pretty harsh there. So a lot of unflyable weather. Our helicopter was also very busy doing intra-facility transports. So sometimes they weren't available because of that. So it wasn't something you could count on. It was a luxury when available.
Right. So what's your current role here?
So I'm the operations manager for all EMS operations. So the finance, the day-to-day operations of the business here.
Great. Who inspired you during your career to seek a leadership role in EMS?
That kind of started day one. Actually, the gentleman that was instructing the EMT class I got into, I can't remember if he was at the time or shortly after, but he became a supervisor, and I just looked up to him. He had a background of being a military medic, very confident in his skills, very capable, a good teacher, a little goofy at times, but just overall a great paramedic, a great leader. And as it happened, I kind of followed him. He helped encourage me into school and through school. And as he moved on with his career and promoted, I actually ended up replacing him as a supervisor. So
That's pretty
kind of followed. He's now off in the air world, working for one of the larger air providers in the country, running all their simulations and training program.
That's great. What would you consider your overarching leadership philosophy? That's a tough one.
Yeah.
That's a tough one to sum up here in just a few seconds.
It is, but I think it has to start with the people, because the business is important. Running the calls is important, but none of that can happen without your people. So you have to, make smart choices with the business, but you also have to take care of your people and take care of the people that take care of your people, take care of your supervisors, take care of your dispatchers, take care of your fleet personnel. There's a lot that goes into it. Those two people that showed up at your doorstep, there's a whole army of people that made that happen.
Right. I know you're an avid reader. What's your favorite leadership book or movie?
I've really enjoyed the kind of series of books around extreme ownership. There's several. There's one called The Dichotomy of Leadership. So it kind of builds on the foundational book that everybody thinks of, the extreme ownership book. It talks about, you've learned all these principles of leadership, but how do you navigate through the dichotomy of actually applying that to your real world situation?
Right.
Not every lesson learned in battle can be necessarily related to the EMT and paramedic running an interfacility transport, but there is a way to. A lot of those lessons do have parallel, and that book helps define that. And how does this philosophy relate to different lines of work and different businesses?
How do you see EMS as it was in Cheyenne compared to how it is here in North Metro Atlanta? Because it's got to be a huge difference.
Yeah, I mean, I think like anything, there's the obvious differences, but there's a lot of similarity to, EMS people or EMS people. A lot of strong-willed, Type A personalities. A lot of smart people, resourceful people. Their EMS providers are problem solvers by nature. I mean, that's what we do. We get presented. It may sound like a common thing, but the location or the patient condition or something may cause that to be drastically different than you may deal with in a controlled environment. So our people are very resourceful in that setting. Here specifically is much more urban, a lot heavier traffic patterns, therefore, generally a lot shorter transport times.
You think the calls are similar?
To a degree, yeah. The market in Cheyenne was a blended market, so they covered the entire county. So everything that happened there, whether it be a standby for a football game or transporting that ventilated patient to a long-term care facility or the cardiac arrest or the baby delivery or a inter-facility transfer to a nursing home. That was
Or the
all
guy
done.
getting thrown off a horse.
Yeah, and everything in between. We did have a lot of outdoor recreational type stuff, but the call volume there was dictated heavily on the weather because obviously that, we're not gonna have the rodeo injuries in the snow, but you do have them during the summer. But you have, people skiing and doing outdoor things or challenges of people that are oxygen dependent, but they're snowed into their home and their power goes out. Now they don't necessarily need a hospital, but we got to get oxygen to them. So sometimes that was the problem solving we were doing.
Tell us about your work with the TEMS unit. What does TEMS stand for? And tell us a little bit about that and your experience.
Yeah, so TEMS is Tactical Emergency Medical Support. So that's what it means. How it looks in practice, it kind of depends on where you are. For us, the law enforcement agencies wanted kind of fully immersed team where they wanted to go beyond having that ambulance staged at a safe distance that kind of knew what was going on.
And that's kind of what we do here.
Yeah. They wanted the medics to be a part of the team, right? So if the SWAT team was training, we were training. If they were on a mission, we were on the mission. So kind of whatever they were doing, we were doing with them. And so obviously we were much closer to the scenes usually, and depending on the structure dictated what we were doing, right? If it's a large building, we may be in the structure. If it's a small 2-bedroom home, we may be just at the front door around the armored vehicle, but it was all kind of dictated on our environment. But when I got involved in that, there was no program. So
Is there a national or any type of state certification for that, or is that something they developed?
So there is, much like a flight paramedic, there's a tactical paramedic certification. I do carry that, and the rest of the guys on the team were working on that when I moved. But yeah, there is other courses and stuff you can take, but at least Wyoming didn't have anything at the state level. They recognized it was a lot of kind of learn as you go. And when we started it, there wasn't a lot of examples, especially in private EMS, of tactical teams. There was a few around the country where fire departments provided that support and stuff like that, which, in a lot of ways was a little easier because, they're employed by the city or the local government, working with the city or the local government.
Right.
Where one of the challenges we had was outside private company now incorporating with these governmental agencies. So, just on the back end, building that program out, we had to start from scratch from, who pays for what, who carries liability, who pays for insurances, what is your role in this situation? Because we're not law enforcement officers. So we're making sure that line is clearly defined of what's their role, what's our role, and how do we fit into that scenario.
Right. About how many missions a year would you run? I can't imagine you guys are getting called out.
No, I don't remember right off the top of my head. It was under 10, 5 to 10 actual missions.
Yeah, it sounds about right to me.
Yeah, we would train, 10 hours a day for twice a month. And then we'd do a full week of training over the summer, which would incorporate like a simulated manhunt in the wilderness, like searching for somebody in the mountains, because we had that in our county. And that was one thing that was a little unique about our team is a lot of teams only focus on urban environments, kicking down doors and storming through houses.
Right.
Where we had to worry about, well, what if they leave that house and they're roaming around the mountain?
Right. How many square miles was that county or if you had to guess?
Yeah, I don't, quite a bit. It was 40 by 40 miles probably. It was maybe a little more. It's a pretty large county because our county carried the Colorado and the Nebraska border of Wyoming.
Wow.
So we're kind of tucked up in that corner.
What do you see as the challenges here in North Metro Atlanta that you're facing coming in? right? We've been here quite a long period of time. System runs well, but like every system has its challenges, right? And where do you see that?
Yeah, I think, it's important because obviously coming in, I have a job to do and some things,
Just
yeah,
beyond
yeah,
the daily operational
you have to
stuff.
jump into the pool right away, and keep things moving and implement certain things. Other things you can sit back and observe a little bit and see where things are. And when I think of things like that, it's things like culture, where's the culture here? Because it's hard to tell day one what a culture truly is somewhere. Obviously, you have people tell you what they think it is, but I like to see for myself what the challenges are.
Well, we talked a little bit about this, right, before we started, and you're looking to build a culture here that people want to come to work, where it's positive, professional, and it attracts the best providers. Yeah, how do you get that rolling? That's
Mhm.
how do you weld this team together and get moving in that direction?
Yeah, I think it's a systematic, system-wide approach, right? In order to have a high performing, high functioning, highly accountable team that starts from the top of the organization. If myself and the other leaders in our organization aren't living the culture we're preaching and wanting to see, we got to fix that. So people look to their leaders for not just what we say, but what we do. So we can't just, say this is what we want it to be. We have to make it be what we want to be by being the things we say we're going to have here. So if we say we're a highly accountable organization, we need to actually do that. We need to be accountable. We need to be consistent. We need to be fair. All the very really culture is a very basic thing. In practice, it becomes much more complicated.
Right.
But it's all the very simple things people want, right? Like you said, people want to come to work and enjoy their work and feel valued.
They're a part of something bigger than themselves, but an important part.
Yeah, and people want to be on a team and a team that's going in a common direction. And that's I think a area we have certainly room for growth in. I think we can from all levels work on our teamwork, right? We're not individuals. We are, but we make up a team.
Right.
Um, and we're all trying to accomplish a goal, and that goal is to provide the best level of care and service to our community. And if we're distracted by interpersonal drama or accountability issues or you name it, that I feel like that can diminish our ability to provide that service.
Right. Takes us off mission.
Yeah.
For sure. What are some of the initiatives or some of the projects that we're rolling forward in the near future?
Probably the biggest one that I can think of is we will be upgrading and updating our CAD system. So we're moving away from Zoll, which we've been on for a long time, to a product called Logis.
Right.
It's more modern version of what we use. I think the benefit of it has a lot more capability of the system helping manage the CAD system, helping manage the big system, right? Where, the days of a dispatcher getting a call and saying, okay, I know on the map the call is here, and I know on the map the truck is here, and they draw a straight line and say, well, this truck is closer. Now, these systems have maps built into them and they know drive time and time of day and traffic patterns, and they learn that and get built better and better as the system goes, and they will make recommendations based off of what the system knows to be true. Just because something might be closer in a straight line doesn't mean it's faster.
That's great. Now, I heard that the dispatchers themselves will have access to roadside cameras as well, so they'll get a closer look. No? All right.
They may. I don't know if that's built into the Logis system or if that's another program.
Component.
Yeah.
All right.
It wouldn't shock me, but it's a pretty capable system.
Yeah. And the posting plan that we utilize, that's all going to be managed inside Lotus as well.
Yeah. So you build the posting plan in, and the system will utilize that posting plan in coordination with what it knows. And that is based on it knows where your peak call volume is at the given time it's looking at. So, for example, at 3 p.m. on a Friday, it knows where calls are dropping at 3 p.m. on a Friday. So it's going to try to shift your resources in that direction. If you have 5 trucks available, that may look differently at 3 p.m. on a Friday than it does at 7 a.m. on a Monday of where that truck gets posted.
Right. Any other initiatives you think that are rolling out? I know we're doing Operative IQ, right?
Yep.
And how is that going to
Operative
impact?
Operative IQ we've used for a while now with narcotics tracking and logging narcotic usage. We are going to be implementing it more into tracking all of our assets, whether it be computers, monitors, radios. It will give us the ability to track where they are, who has them. We can track maintenance issues in that program.
The crew be able to log a maintenance issue on their end into Operative IQ, and then
I believe so. I don't know that for certain.
Okay.
So from a usability standpoint, very similar to the narcotics piece of it. So from the end user, that transition will be very easy.
Yeah, and the learning curve on using the software is going to be less because we're already using it, right? At least one element of it.
Yeah, that's one thing I like. The more we can consolidate things into singular programs, I think the better. Obviously, some programs are better than others at certain things, so you have to have more than one program. But if we have one program that can do different things and people already know how to use it, already have access to it, we should use it to its capability, right? Of, what our call actually is, and you don't have the lag time of people pushing information back and forth between people and waiting for phones to ring and all of those things. And I know some people get leery of automation, right? And I don't mean to scare anybody with, the computer telling them what call to send. There's still a human in the room. There's still a human that has to accept that recommendation. And if they know it to be wrong, they can override it. They can do what they know to be right.
How much influence is the dispatcher themselves going to have over the delegation of units on the road, right? Because if Logis is making all these decisions and they're overseeing that process, if they involve themselves, how does it track that? What does that look like?
Yeah, Logis tracks everything, basically every keystroke that happens, tells you who did it. So we spoke about accountability. I think, it gives us the ability, if somebody overrides a recommendation and does what their human brain said to do, that's okay. Like there's definitely room for that to happen, because sometimes we as humans know things computers don't know for now. It's coming, but that gives us the ability on the back end. Then if that turned out to be wrong, or even if it was really great, we can go look and say, who did that? I really want to recognize them because that was the right thing to do. And that really helped here. I can go and find who did that and either say, great job, keep it up, or, hey, I think we missed the mark on that. Like in the future, I think the recommendation was right here.
Is there an artificial intelligence component of this as well? Is that how it's figuring out where it should be structuring units or staging units?
Well, it ties in. I don't know if it's true AI or if it's just relying on
Coding.
A lot of data from historical call volume data and working with the mapping system it has. I don't know that it's true AI, but yeah. So the maps also, the nice thing is the end user, so the people sitting in the comm center will have the ability to update that map in real time. So if we know the parade and it's going to shut down this 2-mile stretch of road for 4 hours, and we found out about it 15 minutes ago, we don't have to put in an IT ticket somewhere. And by the time they get it done, the parade's over. They can go in and shut that road down in the map, which will automatically reroute our trucks around that closure.
Right. And choose a different unit.
Yeah.
Most likely.
Yeah. It'll affect the recommendations, and it gives us the ability to have more real-time control over the system based on real-time knowledge we're learning from being in the system. And
right. So what is in the truck itself? Is there going to be hardware that the crew is going to have, and how are they going to interact with that, right? Right now we use a device that puts the call on them, it maps the call for them, and it provides them some of the CAD notes as to what's going on with the call. Is that hardware going to change? And what access will crews have to look at that call at what level?
Yes and no. The current phone technology we have today will still exist. We'll still have that. In addition to that will be a hard-mounted MDT in the unit, so there'll be both. I haven't seen the end product yet of what the screen is going to look like.
What size it's going to be? Or...
Yeah, it's a tablet. I know that, roughly 10 inches, but how, like, how the Logis screen looks, how a call looks when you receive it. I haven't seen that end product yet, but the experience have had with Logis in the past is they're pretty open to allowing us to make modifications and changes if something's not working. But, I think it'll be having that bigger tablet screen will give you the ability to maybe see your notes and your map at the same time, hopefully.
Right. Will they have access to see where other units are on the road?
Yeah, and I haven't seen that in product, but I would assume so, yeah.
Yeah.
And the one hope is with the unification of all the PSAPs is it would be not just our units we can see. Anybody that has location tracking ability, we'd be able to see. So if you're responding with an engine and you know what engine that is, in theory, you'd be able to see that engine on the map. I haven't confirmed yet that that's going to be possible, but that's a goal, is to get there.
Right. I know that the company's been out. They've already looked at our system. They've started working on it. When do you think the rollout date on the road for a crew to actually see Logis in action?
Right now, what they're working on is a lot of the back-end infrastructure pieces that they have to get done, which is setting up the bridges between the communication centers and getting that stuff in place, which then we have to, we're relying not only on our internal processes, but we're relying on those external factors.
The
too.
Communities we're operating in and how it
Um,
ties into their system.
Yeah. So I just can't give an accurate timeline. I would assume before the end of the year.
Oh, good. Yeah, that's good. Moving back over to Operative IQ, how is that? I know it's tracking all of our equipment and supplies, right? And there's a component where the lead can look at what equipment's in that unit, right? Through Operative IQ. It can track what's been used, what needs to be replaced, right? So it should yield a higher confidence in the crew members getting into a unit.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But how does that work, right? I thought there's a piece where you won the ambulance or you drive by a certain area and it automatically downloads the tags that are in the unit, is it?
Yeah, Operative IQ has that ability. I don't think we have the infrastructure for that right now because it does require like you pulling through a threshold and it scans the unit, which then knows what's in the unit.
Right. But the leads themselves will be able to go out.
Yeah, it's a simple barcode scanner, so things will be labeled with barcodes. So if it's a bin and it's sealed, it'll have a barcode on it, so we know which bin went in there. And if it's showing a barcode, we know that bin is in there and it's sealed. If we're missing the barcode, the bin needs replaced. But we'll have the ability to do truck checks on Operative IQ.
It's not just an asset tracker where we're ensuring.
It's you have the ability to verify what's there by utilizing those barcodes.
Right. Where do you see the future of EMS going?
Long term, I think EMS as a whole, we really have to evaluate how we do everything we do, and we got to redefine what an emergency is, right? Because the model has always been we have all this call volume, put more units on the road to cover the call volume. And I think people are starting to realize that not all of these calls necessarily need to exist. Maybe there's better resources for these people that's not a 911 ambulance and fire engine and cop car pulling up at your front door. So do we need more units, or do we need to more wisely utilize the units? And then, do you need a highly trained critical care paramedic on every one of those units, or is a basic EMT the right fit for that unit and that call type?
Right.
Or does the system warrant a combination of all of that? And I think that's something everybody's going to have to look at. There's a national paramedic shortage. I think that'll probably continue for the foreseeable future. So paramedics are getting utilized more and more in different roles. Used to be, if you were a paramedic, you worked on an ambulance in the field. Now, paramedics have a lot more options, and we're not really creating more of them than we were then.
Right.
So the supply is the same, but the demand is much higher.
Right.
So I think utilizing the resources you have, more appropriately is something everybody's going to have to do.
And I think one thing is probably the least talked about thing is how do you pay for all this stuff, right? Just doing that CAD update alone, right? We're talking a lot of money here. And to put blood products on the truck, if we're not utilizing, they're going to expire. We have to maintain all that.
Yep.
Right. And
shelf life's about 2 weeks, and it's $600 a unit.
Yeah, there you go. Right. Everybody gets blood. Yeah, it's interesting. I think the cost end of it is not something really providers on the road focus on. Why would they, right?
Yeah.
They had to deliver care and do the best you can.
Yeah, but it's a harsh reality of the world, right? Like even nonprofits, everybody has to worry about, how do you pay the bills? How do you keep the lights on? And the way we do that is collecting money from transporting patients. And, it depends on where you are, but overall reimbursement's a real problem in EMS. Insurance companies and some of the public payers don't pay very well.
And on the private side of EMS, we're kind of tied into different contracting, which greatly influence the rates that we're getting, not in a positive way. So that's another factor, right?
Yeah, just my career, rates haven't went up much. I don't know the exact percentage, but it's pretty low. And the cost of doing business has went up dramatically. Wages just in that 15 years are significantly different. And that's the biggest influencer of our bottom line, right? Is how much are we paying our people?
Right.
Because our people are not only our most expensive, but our most important asset.
Right. I agree. Any other initiatives we're looking at?
That's kind of the big stuff, just any of our dated technologies, keeping that current, keeping it updated. I think just a personal project of mine is what we talked about earlier, working on culture, developing a high-performing team. I want to be the place when people think, where's a really high-performing EMS system that people just love to work at. I want to be at the top of your mind.
Right.
And
I think we all do.
And right? I think this system has all the tools to do it, right? We live in an area that it's very nice. A lot of the types of calls that EMS professionals generally don't like to run, we don't run. It's a good place to live. It's a good place to raise a family. I think just a personal project of mine is what we talked about earlier, working on culture, developing a high-performing team. I want to be the place when people think, where's a really high-performing EMS system that people just love to work at. I want to be at the top of your mind.
Right.
And
I think we all do.
And right? I think this system has all the tools to do it, right? We live in an area that it's very nice. A lot of the types of calls that EMS professionals generally don't like to run, we don't run. It's a good place to live. It's a good place to raise a family. I think
we've got some top tier hospitals right here. We transport to every day.
Yeah,
that's big.
You have access to one of the biggest metro markets in the country. So, if the town you choose to live in doesn't have something, you're not far from it. But yeah, I think that the goods are here, right? A lot of things go well here. There's some stuff that we can clean up for sure, but that's anywhere you're ever going to work in, and we'll get there. But we'll get there through teamwork, consistency, accountability, hard work, and just holding ourselves to a high standard.
I agree. Well, I think you're the right guy at the right time to be here, and yeah, I think it's great.
All right,
I like it all. Thanks.
Thank you for listening to In Service, the EMS Podcast, where frontline experience meets leadership insight. If you have found value in this conversation, please like, subscribe, share, and leave a comment. You will find links in the episode notes.